Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And it is Thanksgiving. And, we talk a lot about like the things that lead up to Thanksgiving, fall and pumpkin spice lattes and
Gobbler.
the Gobbler sandwich at Wawa, which I haven't had yet this year. I am like, my daughter had one maybe about a week ago. And she was like, I had this sandwich, Dad. And I was like, oh, the Gobbler. And
She's not looking at you funny, like, what are you talking about?
yeah, I know. Like, just my expression. She knew. But I've been trying to be good. And it's really tough this time of year. But it's the Thanksgiving episode. So we're talking about Thanksgiving. And we're recording this. This will air actually on Thanksgiving. So, we got a couple days lead here. But it's our chance always to formally, we try and do it a lot more than the episode, but to formally say thank you, right?
And even though it's a repeat, happens every year, just like Christmas and everything else, I don't want it to be lost on people that the thankfulness is the same, right? I mean, it's like, if you went back and looked at the last Thanksgiving episode, you'd hear similar things, or the year before that is similar things. Yeah. And it doesn't make it any less important or any less heartfelt. It's just that it is a time when you get to reflect on the year and the team and all the hard work and things of that nature. And so it's just one of those things that there's a lot of similarities, we'll say in it, but it doesn't make it any less well intended.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I always think about that when we're sitting down to record this episode, because we do feel like we talk about similar things, and we should go back sometime and we'll make the best of
the best of Thanksgiving.
The best of the Thanksgiving episodes. But it is something we say every year. I know for me in particular, I don't see the field nearly as often as you guys do. So I really don't get the chance to formally say thanks to our folks a lot, but it is meaningful to me, at least, that we have the chance, at least annually, if not more often, to say how much we appreciate what our folks are doing, the impact it has on our organization, the impact it has on their families, on our communities. I mean, it's a big deal. So
yeah, and there's so much that we can talk about in terms of not just being thankful for the team and what they do, but being thankful for our clients. Yeah. Being thankful for our partners that we work with, being thankful for our suppliers, right? And it's not just a one-way street where we're trying to identify the team. At least, you know what I mean. For me, I try and focus on how important it is, how complicated this is. We always talk about that people picture that construction guys, it's just a hammer and nails, or a pair of dikes and wires, or a pipe wrench or a track hoe. Yeah. And it's just a bunch of, I almost make it like sports. Like it's a bunch of dumb jocks out doing something, not jocks, but that sort of thing. Right. And that's so far from the truth in the complicated nature of what construction does, but also in how many people are involved in everything we do. In every project we do, there are 10 other companies that we need them to do their piece in order for us to be able to do our piece. And that's probably understating the number, but I'm just saying. So I think it's important that we not just recognize our team every day, you know what I mean? But we're also recognizing the fortunate nature of the relationships we've developed over time to be able to do the work we do, to be able to get the work we do, and to be able to perform the work we do. So when we're saying thank you throughout the year, we do try and do it in a genuine way at any point that it's possible. Because every time I'm out there, I'm thankful for what the guys do every day. And I was running around yesterday, and we're genuinely starting to get ready for winter now, right? So that means both the sites and our equipment and snow. And I was just running around, and there was a part of me that thought, I went back to one of our original sites. And it just sort of brought me back to the original, as I talked to Tom, what it was like, in 2010, 11, 12, you know what I mean? What that was like, and what that growth looks like. And when you can take a big, broad look at what we've done over the last, 10, 15 years for me, 20 years, 20 plus for Ford, it really gives you an appreciation of what's been done, how much it's changed. And some things it's changed really for the better, and other things it's not that it's not for the better, but it's different, and it's I don't know that you would have known we'd end up in this spot. Like I don't know that Ford had, and we've talked about this, I don't know that there was a grand plan to end up in the spot we are. I think he was just, be better tomorrow than you were today. Just go do your work. And we ended up here.
Well, definitely not. But the funny part is with it is that, you said about all the stakeholders on all the stuff that we do, there's just so many nowadays. There's just more than ever. And something I was thinking about, because like everything we're involved in is people driven. And I just heard some big companies like laying off, not in construction, in like real, like in the other worlds, we'll call it, laying off people because like the computers are taking over. And, we use computers, we use a lot of technology, but the reality is our business is probably one of the more secure. The service and the labor intensive business are more secure than, because you still need people to get things done. And, you're talking about the relationships, like, all right, you have a relationship, you go out to a pre-con meeting or a pre-bid meeting or all that stuff. There's all those people there. That's not going to be taken over very quickly by a computer, So that's one of the cool things. Like we're in industries where, we still need teams, and we still have to work with people, and because every day we're finding solutions to issues that pop up, and so not all that stuff can be done by AI. It has to actually have people having conversations and figuring things out and that kind of stuff. So it is more important than ever, the relationships, even though, other outside of our bubbles, it's not that way anymore, but it definitely is internal to us.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that, this particular year, one of the things I'm thankful for is the team's recognition of a need to switch a little bit. You know what I mean? In other words, so one of the big things that we have to be effective at as a leadership team is identifying what work is available, right? Because you can only do the work that's available. That's all. And there's been a number of market constraints with permitting, with interest rates, with the markets, with supply issues and everything else that's had certain markets hold, and they're not as busy as they were. And people can say that's not true. It's fine. Their opinion inherently doesn't matter to me, because we're looking at it, and in peer groups and other things, we're seeing pretty similar things in our area, right? If it gets outside of our area, it can be different. But I think the team did a really good job of looking at and identifying that there was a market shift going on and trying to change some of the work we did. And the guys have been really supportive of that. We've had a number of crews that we've shifted and said, okay, we're not going to do this exact kind of work. We're going to do this kind of work. And it's cyclical, like we know it'll come back. We're looking at the bids, and there's a lot of, big landfill work out there again, that'll go next year. So it's not a change, but it's an adaptation. And I think it's important to be thankful for that the team is willing to do it. They're not so stubborn that they're like, no, this is the work I do. I don't really want to do that work. And a lot of the guys have been really supportive of jumping between different jobs, going from one day they're working on a big commercial site to 3 months later, they're on a residential site. And then 3 months later, they're on a landfill or a golf or, something big. And so, I appreciate that this year, particularly, that they've been adaptive to changing to what the work is that's available.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually thinking about that a little bit, like just internally with my own team and the transition that we've gone through in the last 8 or 10 months, and some of the things that they've been asked to adapt to and to change and to do. And we were meeting yesterday with our accountant team, right? Because we do an annual review, and just like the way some of the folks in my group have been asked to like step up and do different things, be part of those meetings, either like, face to face or in the background doing work that no one sees and no one knows gets done. But it's been impressive to watch that group of people really like sort of just answer the call. It's kind of like what you're saying with some of our field folks. So.
Yep.
Well, I think that's actually one of the hallmarks that might not be on the list downstairs, but just the adaptation. That's how we got here. If anything, like if there's anything you can look through, like if there's a vein that you can look through the center of all the stuff that's happened, is that adaptation is how you go. Like there is no ability to stand still. Like it is always that ability to adjust or to do multiple things, or to plow snow in the winter and then, the storm ends, you go dig dirt again, or types of work that we've done over the years have shifted, and that's maybe more evident this year because we were kind of in a little flow there for a little bit, but it might change again next year. That's just kind of how, as Dan was saying, there is what there is out there, so you got to kind of work within that. As long as it takes people and equipment and knowledge, we can do it. So we can go to wherever that might be available to us.
Yeah, and that is something we've always talked about. Honestly, we've always said that we wear a lot of hats, right? That's how, and I think it's one of the things we have to figure out as we continue to grow and get to this, this sort of, we talked about it, this sort of odd size, right? Where Ford, when I first got into this business, when Ford brought me in, and he brought it to me and he said, like, there's only like two sizes of this company. Like, you have small companies like we are, and you have big companies, like the big boys that are around, and nobody's really in the middle. And we've tried to make a living of getting to that middle ground and saying, okay, we can do the big work, but we can also do the small work. We're not the one man with a backhoe, but we're not the 300 guys, with all these supporting pieces. And we've tried to live in that middle ground. Mm-hmm. But as we did it, I think one of the things we really had to focus on was not losing that you'll wear many hats. We always joke about you specifically, that like Brian was, he was the maintenance guy, he was the IT guy, he was the CFO or the controller or whatever, as your role was when you at different points, and it was whatever needed to be done that someone else didn't do. That was Brian's job.
Sure.
And so I think you're like almost the best example of that. And then, we've tried to get our teams to do that, to embrace that idea. And that's sort of what you're speaking to with your team adapting. And then we've done it on my side as well, where we said, okay, let's find the best thing they can do. But also, sort of Brad has sort of stepped into, he's not Brian. I'm not going to, and if he hears it, like, I don't mean it as an insulting thing, but it's, it's not.
That's a good thing. Right,
He's not Brian, but, we have put together an odd group of responsibilities for Brad that we wouldn't necessarily put together, but it's based on what's needed and what he's capable of, and saying, okay, he can do these things, and Brad being willing to say, like, okay, yeah, I'll do this and this and this, and it's not a prototypical role. And I think we do that with a lot of the team because it's where we came from. And that's something that we always talk about. Brian and I were having a conversation yesterday, I think, maybe definitely this week. And we were talking about that exact fact that, like, we still have the core values that we had when it was just Ford and a bunch of his friends. And we're trying to merge those core values, those behaviors, those beliefs into a system that can allow us to have, 100 employees running around. And that's tricky to manage those two things because sometimes there's some good to it and sometimes it doesn't align.
Yeah. Well, I do think that's the key to core values, right? It wasn't something that was just cool to put on a sign. It was the imprint of who we are. And I think that doesn't really change regardless of some of the things we're talking about, who's on the team, what the team's doing, where the team's going. The imprint of who we are and want to be as an organization kind of stays the same, and that's good. And I was thinking about you saying Brad's not Brian, but I think that's probably a good thing. I think Brad's got a lot of like traits that I don't necessarily have, and so you probably don't need two Brians. That would probably drive you a little bonkers.
That might be too many Brians.
That would drive you a little crazy.
If we had two Brians, we'd need two more mules to pull them around. We'd just become chaos.
Is that a shot at my weight, man? Holy smokes!
No. You remember the old reference?
No, I know.
Brian's just trying to keep things in control as Ford and I drag him through the mud. So it'd be hard to two people telling us we did it wrong, and hard to keep ignoring it, but. And I mean, and honestly, that's one of the things personally I'm thankful for, honestly, is you guys. Because as we've gone through everything over the last, 15 years, the willingness, for Brian specifically, the willingness of continually being willing to tell me, hey, have you thought this through? Have you thought about this? In ways I might not perceive it, that I may not like at the time when you say it.
It really is something you want to hear.
Right.
That's probably true for both of you.
Right. And I don't want to give people a false sense. Like Brian and I, like some of my fondest times of being here was when you and I were in the paving shed. Because then we were just us all the time, and we developed a rapport that was really good. But when push comes to shove, we usually look at things from a different angle. We may still have the same opinion in the end. Sometimes we don't, sometimes we do, but we generally look at it from two different ways. Yours is much more pragmatic and looking at it from a, will this work? How are you going to fund it? What will it yield? Is it worth it? Whereas mine is more of like a operational, we just got to go. Is the more I feed into the machine, the better the machine runs. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm like trying to go full throttle, because if we have the throttle wide open, it's got to be better. And you're like, okay, is it actually more efficient to run this full throttle, or is that even the right fuel that you're trying to put in this thing? Like, are you putting diesel in this tank? What are you doing? You know? Yeah. And so I appreciate that. And then similarly, you know, one of the things that I've had with Ford is Ford being able to be a sounding board as I try and figure out how to not be Ford, but to drive the company forward the way Ford would have or did when Ford was at the helm driving the ship every day. Sure. And so it's tricky for me to navigate that, but I think it's key that I have, you know, you guys in place to be able to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually funny. I saw someone sent me a post that was done. It was like, in the spirit of Ford. And I'm like, I'm still alive. But it was, but that is the thing, is like, you know, we have to, you know, no two people are the same. And so you have to allow people to do it in their own way, as long as it's within particular guardrails.
Sure.
And, you know, so people are like, oh, it's a little different than it used to be. Well, yes, it is. Like, that's life. Like, it's going to always be that way.
Right.
There is no, like, it's going to be exactly the same for ever and ever. Amen. And so it gets adjusted, and that's part of the deal. You know, there's certain people, you know, people work together with certain clients better, certain things happen. So, you know, we might shift from certain clients to different clients because they work better with the, you know, team in a different format. So that's always an adjustment that is, you know, I think I've been thinking about this a lot, how, like, you know, yeah, everything's changed. Team members don't stay as long as they used to, all that kind of stuff. But everything always had to have changed. It's just that either people, you know, revisionist history, or, you know, looking back is always 2020, but like, there's no way that things didn't happen that way. Mm-hmm. It's just that people don't remember that they happened that way. They don't remember that the change happened. They don't remember that X, right. Y, and Z. Yeah. Well, that has, you know, look at the big companies that are like multi-generational. There's no way that it was exactly the same from grandfather to grandson running the company, but people are like, oh, it's always been the same. And you're like, you know, if we actually looked at it, I'm pretty sure that's not exactly the case. I think it's just because all of our changes have happened in in little blocks of time. So it feels more changey. That's a good word, but it just feels like they're happening more quickly just because of the age of the company. But I don't think that like it really is that way. I think that everything you have to constantly adapt and keep moving on.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm going to like agree, but also like diverge a little bit is I almost think that there is, to your point, a similarity with it, that if you flip-flopped, if you put Ford back in this seat, so to speak, right, we would still, I do genuinely think we would still likely make almost all the decisions very similarly, but the dynamics around it have changed, right? Like, we talk about Luke when Luke ran the shop, and like, will we ever be able to get anybody to run the shop the way Luke runs the shop? And when we're thinking about it, we think about it like Luke did this thing and it was amazing. He was so efficient at it, right? But at the end of the day, usually in that conversation, we end up at a spot that we don't say Luke couldn't do it today, but we say that when Luke did that, it was not what it is today. So like, okay, yes, Luke knew where every piece of equipment was, but there was 10 pieces of equipment. Right? Like, Luke knew how to fix everything, but we only had like 3 variations of a piece of equipment. We didn't have all this ancillary stuff. We didn't do as many things as we do. So I think that's the revisionist sense of it, that you look at it and it seems like it was simpler or maybe easier and maybe better, but it's because it was simpler, right? Like, the longer we go and the bigger we get. And it's not independent of each other. Like, it's not just getting bigger. If we stayed at the size we are for the next 40 years, things would still change. And it would not be exactly the same, because much like everything else, you know, Brian and I were talking the other day about you can't even work on a car anymore. And things have gotten more complicated. Like, the machine that Luke could run out and tinker on, he really might not be able to do now. There's too much electronics on it. You know what I mean? Maybe he could, maybe he couldn't. You know what I mean? Like, when the Encon goes down, that's a problem, because it's not, You didn't break a tooth on the bucket. You know what I mean? You don't have to bang a pin through. Like there's some hydraulic line. It could be the electronics. It could be the control. It could be the joist. Like there's all kinds of stuff it could be that has nothing to do with taking a wrench and going out and fixing something, you know? So
you look forward to just a good old hydraulic hose leak. Where you're like, okay, take 2 wrenches, loosen it up, take the hose off, take it to the shop, get a new hose, put back on, and get 5 gallons of hydraulic oil.
You know where I was the other day? This is a while ago, probably 2 months ago, but there's, do you remember? I think it was called AJR, or it was definitely an A to start with. It was in Plymouth Meeting, right off 476 on Ridge.
The hose company?
Yes, the hydraulic place. Yeah. And that's a training facility now.
Oh, really?
Actually, it's the Sullivans, Kevin and Brendan and all that. Quinn. They have they do training out of this thing that used to be. And I think I tried to send somebody there like 6 months ago. I think it might have been Tom. I was like, Tom, that place is, he was down that way. And I was like, just run into Plymouth Meeting, and he like called me. He's like, it's not here. And I was like, not there. And then I ended up there, and I was like, oh yeah, it isn't here. But to your point, like that used to be the biggest problem when something broke that we couldn't fix was a hydraulic line, right? It was like the filters are clogged. You know what I mean? Like if your filters are clogged now, it's not getting fixed quickly. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna have to. The thing won't regen. It turns into a whole thing.
What it highlights, and jumping on a different topic, but what it really highlights is that the care needed now for this heavy metal is even more important than it ever was.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, you see it, how much on our repair costs or whatever it is. It's like when something small happens, got to fix it right away, or got to alert somebody to it, or
regular maintenance,
right?
Regular inspections. Yeah.
And in the old days, that
trying to stay
might
ahead of it. Yeah.
You could have slid a little bit more in that because
it's
just
had
metal.
An old piece of equipment, or even like talk about old cars. How long could you go without changing your oil? I mean, the thing was just going to run, and now you have all kinds of sensors going off. You have
emails coming to you that your oil is down to 2%.
Yeah, Ford's got a couple of those.
Yeah. I had one this other day. I'm like, okay. But I mean, all that stuff has changed. Better or worse, it's irrelevant. It's just that is the reality of where, they're trying to make the equipment better, more efficient, supposedly. But, it's tough when you're mixing heavy equipment with earth and technology. Like it's
a struggle.
We always joke about the rock trucks back in the day. Like they're like, oh, they have these issues. I'm like, it needs to have a forward reverse, an automatic forward reverse, a gas pedal, and a key to turn it on. Because once you get all this deaf stuff and everything else in there, like it's getting bounced around all day. That's its job, is literally to get beat up. And it stuff that sensors usually are made to not really be bounced around. That's not their favorite thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be interesting long term, in the next, let's say over the next 5 years. We've rebuilt some old equipment, right? Like specifically the 63s and the 53. And to look at what the maintenance cost is on this stuff, right? Like, will that become something that people really start to look at? Like, remember when the glider trucks, right?
Rip the engines out, put them in a new one.
And like, will it become a thing that we look at and say like, okay, there are certain machines, and a rock truck could be one, you know what I mean? Where you're like, it would be better to have an old rock truck that doesn't have some of this stuff. And like the new ones tell you what your payload is, and it can be, they're neat.
Yeah.
But you got a lot of electronics, you know what I mean? And in my head, those trucks, what I always picture is when something goes mildly wrong, not really bad, but mildly wrong, and the bed rolls over. And they're made to it's a toy. It's made to flip right back. You're not supposed to flip it.
No, right.
But if it rolls and it's just slowly rolls over and you can just pull it right back up, it should just drive. But I don't know that happens as easily with all the electronics. And I wonder if that's the one I picture. Like a Traco, most of those electronics, I feel like the gain of having all of that GPS data is worth the cost. Not the purchase cost. Theoretically, it might be worth that, but is worth the risk of more things breaking. But there's other things where I start to question it. Dozers being one of them. I start to question, would it be better to have, 3 old dozers that just get stuff close and 1 dozer on GPS? You know what I mean?
Finish machine. Just
the finish machine. And it's counterintuitive. That's not what all of us are doing.
Sure.
But would it be worth it to do it just because you reduce the likelihood of stuff not working and the people's reliance on it when they really don't need it? You know what I mean?
But the manufacturers are playing an interesting game. We're way off topic here, but
are we thankful for them, the manufacturers?
I mean, you think about it. We have pickup trucks that are only 10 years old, and you can't find parts for them.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, old cars, back in my day when it, walked uphill both ways to school, but old cars, you could go get any part for anything. There was at least a secondary manufacturer. There was something.
Right. Yeah.
And then by them not providing, like, I was just thinking about that. Like, I like the idea, and we've been talking about it for years, and we started doing with some of the equipment, but then it's like, okay, what if you can't get, like, that's how they're going to make you not do that, is by not being able to provide
that's
you
true,
the materials.
but we also, you can pretty easily get a part for like a 1972 Barracuda. You cannot easily get a part for a 2012 F-250. That's intentional. So I don't know if the market will change. But I was going to say, I think Ford could be the one person that may have actually been able to walk uphill both ways to school, purely because the school was with Carol. You know what I mean? And I feel like Carol would have made the school at the top of the hill and be like, hey, actually, I'm over here on this other hill. You're going to have to run down that.
The other hill now.
That was part of it. So you might have actually had to walk uphill both and drag a tree or something.
Yes, I definitely did walk uphill because there was a valley in between. So we definitely did walk uphill both ways. But no, it's just an interesting, and that's the funny part is we've had this conversation before, and meet other owners or other, and they're like, oh, and it's like, it's fun to look back, but the reality of it is the future is in front of us, and we have to just, we talked about earlier, we have to adapt and
go to work.
The team has to do it because, like, we can't. It might have been wonderful in 2006 or whenever people want to remember that highlight from, but the reality is that that's happened. That's in the books, and it's time to just, Thanksgiving, what comes after Thanksgiving, Christmas, and what comes after Christmas is New Year's and next year, and move on to that piece as best we can.
Well, in our favorite times, looking back, and Ford said revisionist, right? And that's what it is, right? Like, if you actually, like, and I'll even give like a nod of the head to the guys who say that, like, some of my favorite times are when it was absolute chaos with snow, right? Or work. Like, I can remember some of the landfill jobs when we really just got into landfill, and it was stressful. You know what I mean? Like, it was, I would not have said, oh, this is fun. I'd like to do this exact thing for the next decade. Right. But then we look back at it and it was fun because you got through it. And so that's the thing that's really always important to remember as you take stock of where you are today, is that someday you'll look back on today, and today will be remembered differently than you perceive it right now. And as long as you can keep working, keep putting one foot in front of another, keep trying to succeed, not inherently succeeding, right? Because you're not always going to succeed, but just keep going, keep working, keep putting one foot in front of the other. Someday you will look back at that spot and you'll remember a better version of it than was that day. And that's not to say there's not better times and worse times.
Sure.
It's just to say everything looks better when you're looking back at it than when you're trying to get through it,
Yeah. I think we got drifted a little way from Thanksgiving.
I was bringing that back.
When we do the best of, this one will be the different one.
This will be different. So, thanks, everybody.
So that's a good place to wrap it up, though. Thanks, folks, for joining us. We hope you got something from this. We hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Spend time with friends and family. And I hope you come back for another episode.